Good morning. I'm back with more abusive marriage on this topic, and I'm going to call this deep background and preview of how I got into this situation long term. So a couple strange things happened when I was dating this person, and the most alarming and what should have caused me to either seek couples counseling right away or perhaps just dump this guy was that when I stayed over at his house one night on a fairly chilly night, he had this space heater, early 90s. His room, I guess, was an addition to the house and did not have very good heat. So he had this fan with the heating element and it blew hot air. It was about 10 inches from the bed on his side on the floor. And one night we woke up in the middle of the night because there was a very, very bright light in the room. It was just so strange and I could feel a very intense heat. So we both sat up in bed immediately and there were flames shooting out of this heater. I mean, it was an absolute miracle that the bedding did not catch on fire and just kill us or severely scar both of us. So he instantly pulled the plug out of the wall, and I think he threw something over it and stifled the flames, and it was absolutely terrifying. I'd never been in a situation like that, and I said, "You're going to get a new heater, right?" That was just so scary, and his response was, "Yeah, I'll take care of it." He was always Mr. Fix-It. I'll take care of everything. And, he was still paying for a lot of our outings. And he had a much nicer place to live than, I did. Well, actually, I was in a pretty decent place. It was more of a historic building. But he was in a beautiful suburb with these people. And I went back down to his house, a couple weeks later. And there was a heater plugged into the wall that looked exactly like the one that had caught fire. I said, "Oh my God, where did you find the exact same heater?" He said, "Oh, I didn't buy a new one. I just sent it back to the manufacturer and told them it was defective. And they fixed it for free." And I should have run for the hills. Oh my God. I said, "You're not turning that thing on while I'm here." And he would plug it in and turn it on. So that's a boundary violation. I realize now I didn't know what those were, but that was an absolute no for me, and I just did not feel powerful enough to express that, and I really wanted to make this work. I don't even think we're engaged at the time, so I could have easily walked away, but anyway, then we were planning our wedding, and this really was not terribly traumatic, but his controlling nature was starting to show. Every single decision he wanted to be a part of. He wanted to go with me to choose every single wedding gift on our registry. He wanted to know what color flowers I was interested in. He visited the florist. He tasted the cake, et cetera, et cetera. And all of my friends were very surprised and thought, "Oh, you're so lucky. This guy really wants to be involved. Oh, this is great." I was starting to feel absolutely stifled and cornered on a lot of issues because he wouldn't compromise very well. He had a smile on his face and he would say, "Oh, let's just choose something we both like, et cetera, et cetera." But in the end, I really didn't choose a whole lot on my own. So I basically thought, well, that's what happens when you get married. You give up your autonomy and you start to make joint decisions. Well, not really a good long-term proposition. The biggest conflict we had was about the part that I thought was going to be the most fun, and that was the honeymoon. We got married in the winter, and we live in California, so I thought, okay, it's warm in the winter. Let's go someplace with snow. And one of our earliest group dates was to the mountains with friends to go skiing. So I had this vision in my head of, the Canadian Rockies or something. And he just kind of flipped out on me and said, "Nobody does that. That doesn't sound like any fun. Who would go to the mountains in the middle and want to be cold on their honeymoon?" And I was like, "Well, I would. You're marrying me." But I kept those thoughts to myself. And he just went on and on. Everybody goes to the beach. Everybody wants to be in the sun and have tropical drinks. So I just thought that was odd. And I realized now, or, a long time later, that was black and white thinking. It also was a bit of triangulation where he was bringing in these fictitious other people who would criticize our decision and look down on it and do something else, of course, and therefore my ideas were not valid. So I guess that's a bit of invalidation as well. And if you're watching this, you've probably watched a bunch of narcissist YouTube channels. I have been very well educated by many of these people, and I will thank them in another video. So anyhow, I was experiencing these behaviors very early on, and quite frankly, I was not trying to impose my will on him with regards to basically any of this. I thought we need to compromise, and most of the time that meant me giving in. Anyway, I'm going to jump ahead a long way into the future, about 17 years. Actually, I guess it was 15 years. When my daughter was 15 and my son was 17, to the time when I finally had enough and filed for divorce. And once again, I tried to be inclusive. I mean, it's just so crazy in retrospect. I didn't just leave. I didn't have a plan, really. I sat him down and wanted to talk to him about why I wanted to leave and how things had not worked out and we'd be better off on our own. And this ultimately led to me calling the police on him several times and going to court, getting 2 restraining orders. Now we still have an order in place, which is a no contact order, except in cases of very serious issues with our daughter, who's soon going to be 18, thank God. But I just, ultimately, I couldn't believe that I ended up in a situation where I was afraid in my own home. I was afraid in my car or his car to ride with him. Several times he almost seriously injured me or got into an accident in his car. So I had to stop riding with him under all circumstances. And, times when I had to have the police in my home, the threats that I endured, and going to court, spending thousands on attorneys.